The radio crackled once, then went dead, and in that sudden silence, Captain Mara Hale knew that 270 lives were hanging on the thinnest thread she had ever felt. Below her, the valley burned. Smoke rose in jagged columns, tracer fire stitched the air, and somewhere inside that bowl of dust and fire, an entire battalion was surrounded. Command's voice came back sharp and final in her headset. Abort the run, pull up, climb out of the kill zone. Mara didn't answer. Her hands tightened on the stick, her heart thudding louder than the engines of her A-10, and she whispered to herself, not today. Just 30 minutes earlier, the mission had been routine. Close air support, low threat assessment, in and out. The troops on the ground, young voices, tired voices, had joked over the radio while marking their positions. Then the ambush snapped shut. Enemy forces poured in from the ridgelines, heavy weapons dug in where no one had expected them. The valley turned into a trap, and the laughter vanished, replaced by panic, shouting, and the unmistakable sound of men trying not to die. Mara had flown hundreds of missions, but this one felt different the moment she rolled into the airspace. She could hear it in the JTAC's voice, Staff Sergeant Cole Ramirez, strained, clipped, forcing calm like a man holding a door shut against a flood. "We're taking fire from 3 sides," he said. "Ammo low, casualties mounting." Then, quieter, almost lost under the gunfire, "Ma'am, we need you." The first run had been clean. She had lined up the enemy positions and delivered precision fire that bought the troops precious minutes. But the enemy adapted fast. Man-portable air defenses appeared from nowhere. Warning lights flared in her cockpit. Command came on immediately. "Hale, you're spiked. Abort. Climb now." Mara hesitated. She looked down again, seeing tiny figures sprinting between shattered vehicles, dragging wounded men through dirt that was already dark with blood. She remembered her first deployment, the fear she had hidden behind jokes, the pilot who had stayed just a little longer so her convoy could escape. She remembered his name carved into a memorial wall 2 years later. "Abort, Captain," Command repeated, firmer now. "We can't lose an aircraft." She swallowed hard. "If I abort," she said, voice steady despite the storm in her chest, "they're overrun in 10 minutes. Silence answered her. Then the order came, cold and final. "That's not your call." Mara made it anyway. She pushed the throttle forward and rolled back into the valley, descending into a chaos that clawed at the wings of her aircraft. Alarms screamed. The A-10 shuddered as rounds slammed into its armor. She felt each impact like a punch to her own body. Fear surged, raw, undeniable, but beneath it burned something stronger. Responsibility. 270 souls trusting a voice in the sky. "Ramirez," she called. "Mark your friendlies again. I'm with you." Relief flooded the reply, edged with disbelief. "Copy, Hog 1. Smoke out. God bless you." She lined up the next run, heart racing, breath shallow. The gun roared, a sound so violent it felt like the world was tearing itself apart. Enemy positions vanished in fire and dust. The pressure on the ground eased, just a little, but it was enough for the troops to regroup, to pull their wounded into tighter cover. On her third pass, a missile streaked past her canopy, close enough that she flinched despite herself. Command was shouting now, overlapping warnings and orders. Fuel was dropping faster than planned. One engine warning light flickered, then steadied. The A-10 was built to take punishment, but even legends had limits. "Mara," Command said, her first name now, stripped of rank. "You have done enough. Get out." She thought of the ground again. Of Ramirez, still directing fire with blood soaking his sleeve. Of the youngest voices she'd heard earlier, now silent. "Not yet," she said softly, and dove again. Each run grew harder. Smoke obscured targets. Her hands ached from gripping the controls. She felt time stretching, each second thick and heavy. On the radio, the tone shifted. Less panic, more coordination. The troops were moving, breaking contact inch by inch. Then her fuel warning blared, unmistakable and merciless. "Ramirez," she said, forcing calm. "This is my last pass." There was a pause. "Understood," he replied, and then, quietly, "Thank you." She lined up the final run with everything she had left. The gun thundered one last time, tearing open the strongest enemy position still pinning the troops. When she pulled up, the valley fell away beneath her, and for the first time since entering it, she climbed. The silence afterward was deafening. She limped the aircraft back to base, hands shaking now that there was space to feel it. The moment the wheels touched down, her knees went weak. On the tarmac, she sat in the cockpit, helmet pressed back against the seat, eyes closed, breathing through the tremor that racked her body. Hours later, in a dim briefing room, she finally heard the full report. The battalion had broken free. Evac helicopters had reached the wounded. Losses were heavy, but far less than they would have been. 270 troops were alive. No one cheered. There was only a quiet, heavy gratitude that settled over the room. Mara faced consequences, debriefings, questions, raised eyebrows from people who spoke in regulations instead of heartbeats. She answered honestly. She hadn't been reckless. She had been committed. Weeks later, a letter arrived. It was handwritten, the paper creased and smudged. Ramirez wrote about the moment they heard her come back after being told she wouldn't. About men who found the strength to keep fighting because someone above them refused to leave. At the bottom, he had written a simple line, "You reminded us that we mattered." Mara folded the letter carefully and placed it in her flight bag. She flew again after that. Many times. Each mission carried its own fear, its own weight. But whenever doubt crept in, she remembered the valley, the fire, the choice. She remembered that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was deciding that other lives were more important than your own safety. And somewhere, far from the roar of engines and the scream of alarms, 270 people went on living ordinary lives, laughing, struggling, loving, because one pilot refused to abort the mission when it mattered most.